Welcome to Business Reporter's Future of Retail campaign. I'm Rachel Hicks. Retailers and brands are facing a huge challenge. There's a growing disconnect between the services they offer and their customer expectations. Competition is now just a click away as shoppers increasingly move online and the level of service they want increases. Every touch point is critical, and at any stage, the shopper could drop off through perceived lack of service whilst browsing online, or be distracted by the sheer volume of digital information around them. Brands and retailers that don't embrace the change in both store and warehouse dynamics, both online and in the physical world, will fail. At the heart of this is the need to evolve. To survive, brands and retailers need access to relevant data, which provides real business insights, informs the right actions to fulfill consumer expectations, and builds resilience when disruptions hit. So how can they do this? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today with Guy Courtin from Tecsys. Good morning, Guy.
Morning, Rachel.
So to what extent does retail need to reinvent itself? Are bricks and mortar dead?
Retail needs to reinvent itself consistently. And I think what's happened is that with COVID, we have sort of had a knee-jerk reaction to say that retail is dead or brick and mortar is dead, stores are dead, retail is, is broken, so to speak. But the reality is this: retail has been in constant flux since the dawn of time. Right? Since we first had our markets in Greece, to having mom and pop stores, to having malls, to having big box stores, to having mail order catalogs, to having the e-commerce, right? If you look at retail historically, it is constantly changing. That is the one consistent. Now, yes, COVID has been a disruption for certain aspects of retail, but retail is certainly not dead. Bricks and mortar are certainly not dead. If you look at recent numbers, right, retail, e-commerce is still maybe at most 20 to 22% of overall retail globally. So what does that mean? That means that almost 80% of retail is still being done in a physical store. So the physical store is certainly not dead. The physical store, however, is being redefined. The physical store itself, the role it plays within retail is changing, and that's very exciting. Retail stores, for example, if you look here in the United States, Dick's Sporting Goods had a great announcement. They have a new store, which is going to have a lot of experiences in it. Climbing walls, batting cages, a soccer pitch to try on the latest Adidas boots, things of that nature, right? So the store itself is not dead. It's being redefined. And retail itself is certainly not dead. You and I and all of us listening to this are part of that retail ecosystem. And the last I checked, and the last time I checked my credit card, I still shop a lot.
So what are the consequences if brands and retailers don't accept there is a mismatch between what they're offering and consumer expectations?
I think there's a real danger there. I think first and foremost, and this is maybe obvious, but it's worth mentioning, is you're going to lose customers. You're going to lose revenue. And you can't, no retailer can afford to do that. So if you don't accept this new reality, which quite frankly, if you haven't accepted it yet, you're probably in deeper water than you think, you're going to lose customers. Secondly, if you have accepted it but grudgingly and you haven't taken more of a holistic view of it or more of a network view of all this, what's going to happen? You're going to lose not customers necessarily, but you're going to lose margin. You're going to have or going to be forced to take actions that are to remedy a problem that you could have addressed if you had taken a more holistic strategy of both the online and the physical world, the new reality of retail, the new e-commerce growth, et cetera. If you haven't taken that strategy and you're now sort of chasing your tail, so to speak, sure, if Rachel orders a product and expects it in 2 days, and I can get it to you, but I have to expedite it, all of a sudden that margin I had on the product goes out the window. Why? Because my fulfillment cost, my execution cost, the analog part of that has destroyed all the margin I gained by selling it to you online. So I think the challenge for retailers is if you haven't accepted this, if you haven't put together a holistic strategy, you are at the threat of A, losing customers, losing revenue, and B, which I think is more of a hidden cost, but just as important, is losing margin.
What can brands and retailers do to solve this problem?
I think brands and retailers really, first and foremost, they need to do a hard assessment of what is it that they have currently when it comes to their technology landscape, their ecosystem, their data, their labor, right? And even to some degree, do an assessment of what is their tolerance for risk and for change management, right? One of the things I think is very important in all this for retailers to really be able to not only survive, but thrive in this industry is there's going to have to be some, at times, uncomfortable decisions that have to be made internally, right? Some change management that has to happen. So these retailers, in order to better prepare themselves, first and foremost is to look across the board, these aspects I just mentioned, right? What is their risk tolerance? What's their change management? What is the information they have that can help them make better decisions? What are the technologies they currently have that can provide the tools for them to do new things or to meet their customers where they need to be? And what about their physical side, the analog perspective? What are their distribution centers, their stores, their fulfillment network look like? Really do a hard audit of all that and then start making hard decisions based on, again, where they want to go and what makes the most sense for their customers. Not customers as a whole, but understand their customers. What does she really want from you? What experience, what product, how does she want it delivered? How does she want the experience? And manage to that. I think that's also very key.
What does the future look like if retailers want to stay in business?
First and foremost, Rachel, I think the future for retail is very bright. I think the notion of the death of brick and mortar or the death of retail is vastly overrated from a headline statement. I think that retail is, you and I and everybody else, right? We are going to constantly shop. That is not going to change. I think what the constant is with retail, as we talked about before, is change. And I think the pace of change is accelerating. And I think retailers need to take that into mind. I think retailers moving forward need to, embrace the fact there's great opportunity. They need to embrace the fact that I do believe it's very exciting and bright for retail. However, I think retailers need to also be aware of the following. A lot of emphasis has been placed on the digital side of retail, which absolutely understandable needs to be there. It's very important to have a strong digital strategy. But we cannot do that at the expense of the analog side of retail. So what do I mean? What do I mean by that? Is all we have to do is look through the headlines recently of, hey, a container ship got stuck in the Suez Canal and backed up supply chains for days, weeks, sometimes even months with regards to the flow of goods. So what does that demonstrate? That we're still, as retailers and direct-to-consumer brands, we're still in the business of moving physical goods and fulfilling physical goods to the end consumer. We still have an analog side of our business where we have to actually get those sneakers, that bottle of water, those cosmetics, those consumer electronics, that sport coat to the end consumer, wherever that end consumer is. So I think for retail moving forward, for the next year, 3 years, 5 years, you must have a strong strategy digitally, absolutely, but you cannot sacrifice or ignore the analog side of your business. You have to understand how the two are going to coexist and work together in harmony in order to meet our needs as consumers. Because I think the future of retail is very bright. The future of retail for us as consumers is tremendously exciting and bright. All the options we have with regards to fulfillment, experiences, new brands, et cetera, that are out there is constantly evolving and really, really fantastic from that standpoint. The challenge now becomes for those retailers, how do I meet those consumer needs? How do I meet your digital desires from the demand side, from the accessibility side? And then guess what? How do I fulfill those orders in an analog world in an efficient, cost-effective, and timely fashion? Because at the end of the day, as we all know, the beauty of retail today is, you know what? If I order something and I don't like the experience or doesn't get there on time, I won't go there again. I'll go somewhere else. And guess what? Because of the digital side of retail, I have access to almost unlimited options. But if the analog side doesn't meet those expectations, I will just, as a consumer, take my business elsewhere. So retailers need to be hypersensitive to this and understand that, again, yes, have a strong digital strategy, but don't forget your analog strategy. The two have to coincide. The two have to work together in harmony to meet us, the consumer, and our growing expectations. But at the end of the day, the future is bright, and I'm looking forward to retail in the next few years.
Guy, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you, Rachel.